Good morning. Have you ever struggled getting the right look for your photos? Something seems off, the editing is difficult. Well, after helping thousands of photographers over the years, I've realized that there are very common mistakes happening when it comes to editing. People do the same mistakes over and over again, and I actually used to do them too. So in this video, we're gonna see if you are making one of those 5 mistakes and how you can fix those mistakes. And even if you're a seasoned photographer or a seasoned editor, make sure you watch until the end because the last 2 may still apply to you. So if you're ready, let's get right into it. Grab a pen, grab a piece of paper. And let's thank our sponsor of the day, Luminar Neo. Luminar Neo is an editing software that is simple to use, yet creates really in-depth, impactful edits that I've used and recommended over the years. Don't worry, this video applies no matter what software you're using, but if you need a new one or you want to try it out, Luminar Neo, there's a link in the description for you. Let's get started with the first biggest mistake, the halo effect. And that one is completely unnatural. Let me explain. There's 2 ways you can actually create that, and I can spot it from a million miles. First, before we dive into why and how to fix it, let me explain something about editing. Editing is a way to bring a look to a photo, in my opinion, but it's something that has to be done in a natural way. And when I say natural, obviously you're pushing it artificially, but in a way that looks natural to the person who is looking at the photo. If the person can tell all the artifacts that are happening in your image, then the deception is real, and the viewer and even yourself may get disappointed in the results. So the art of editing is to make all those tweaks, everything, adding looks, making it look cinematic, making it look grainy, etc., feel completely seamless and natural. And one of the biggest hurdles to that are masking and vignetting. So let me explain. There's a vignetting tool on all editing softwares. You can find it here on Luminar Neo, and you can slide it from the left to the right, okay? It's great. It brings and recenters a little bit the action. Now the issue is that it makes it in a very geometrical way, right? It kind of like makes it look like it was taken, your photo was taken through a pinhole. So what I suggest is, if you have to use that vignetting tool, to be extremely cautious with it and using it a tiny bit, only to a point where you cannot tell that there is vignetting. Or even better, if you want to go the pro version, then you go to your masking and you start adding gradient masking, and then you reduce the shadows or the exposure or whatever you want in those areas, and you actually frame it in a way, as you can see on that photo, that makes it look natural in the image. Again, you want to make it look seamless, and so if you can work a little bit with what is already present in the image and just reinforce that, that really makes it impactful. The second point about the crazy halo effect is, the second mistake is actually having a leaky mask. Okay, so when you're masking, when you're selecting an object, when you're selecting a person from a background, when you start bumping that subject out of the background with the shadows or the exposure, you can very quickly jump into the realm of ghost, where it looks like your character became a ghost and has a halo around. So you want to be extremely cautious as a fix to your mask. And there's 2 ways to do it. So you want to mask just right to the edge, and then you want to be sure that you're feathering, which means like how slowly it moves from one area to another, is seamless and is barely perceptible. Also, some of the AI masks are really good at detecting subjects and keeping those borders very tight. So you can play with that again and then just be a little bit fine on it. As you can see how I'm doing it on the screen, this is kind of how you want it to look at the end, keeping it very clean, and you don't want to be able to tell that this subject or this part of your image had a mask. I can look at a photo from very far away and tell you if there is a mask that is getting a little leaky and ghosting or not. And why? Because I used to make that mistake when I started, and I sent one of those photos in print, and the print lab was like, "Are you sure you want to print this? There's a lot of masking error in there, or like mistakes." And I was like, oops. And then I rewrote the image. They helped me. Very thankful for them helping me through that mistakes. But wow, big learning lesson, and I keep it to this day. So now let's move on to our second mistake, which is not understanding color editing. So what exactly is happening when you're editing colors in an image? Well, the first thing you want to think is, if you're starting from raw image like I am right now on Luminar, is that I want to adjust my white balance. And that white balance, if you look at it from the left to the right, is going to completely affect the colors in the image, right? It can be warmer or cooler, and you're gonna have basically more or less blues, more or less warm tones. Why is this important to do first? Because I see a lot of people actually play with the color sliders for the HSL, which is the hue, saturation, luminance, which is cool to create a look, and that is very helpful. But the issue is that if you don't get the white balance where you want it to be first, well, then you're kind of losing information, because the white balance is actually working on that raw image and you're not adding anything onto your image. You're not changing much. It's the cleanest way to get the color look that you want first. Now, there's a limit, obviously, where your white balance and your people are gonna turn yellow, which isn't what you want exactly. So you wanna find that balance where you get that warm or cool tone without overdoing it, and then only after you move to that HSL panel to move things around. What you can do once you've adjusted that white balance is you can start playing indeed with that HSL, and also you can play, especially in Luminar Neo, there's really awesome things like Twilight Enhancer, which gives you an ability to recreate, how do you call that, a look where it looks like it's at twilight, it looks like it's at sunrise or at sunset. And honestly, it is pretty cool to be able to tweak that after. But first and foremost, I would really encourage you to play with the white balance if you can get it right, and then you stack things on top. But your white balance is kind of like the basis for your colors in a way. The advantage of tweaking the white balance over the HSL is that you can have the same consistent look through photos when it comes to contrast, shadows, how colors are interpreted, but you can make it just slightly warmer or cooler, and try to work with that first before tweaking the rest. So now let's move on to the third mistake. And the third mistake is not localizing your edits. Look, we have this beautiful portrait, we have a background, we have torii gates, they're red, our subject is wearing that like light green dress. And honestly, what's very important here is not to edit the entire photo the same way. Why? Because if I apply a look to my image and it kind of destroys the look on the face on the subject, but I like it on the background, well, I'm running into that simple issue that I see a lot of people do, is try to fit the photo into a look. And you want to think about it the other way around. You want to actually apply and work with that photo to create the look that you want. Okay, it's not the other way around. You don't slap the look on the photo. You start from your creative vision with the photo, and then you actually tweak it to achieve the result you want. Okay, this is especially relevant for portraits. Let me show you in a minute what I mean. So I want to edit the image globally and do a few adjustments. So we talked about the white balance. We're doing a little bit of the contrast also. And my goal now is going to be edit the portrait and the background differently. Why? Because I want the portrait to come out more. I don't want it to be as contrasted on the face. I don't want the skin to look too sharp or too contrasted. And so this is where the magic of those tools that you have here and that you can create with masks in Luminar Neo are the face AI and the skin AI, which allows you to right away improve the face light, the light on the face, and just on the face, right? And it allows you to do the same thing for the eyes and for the teeth individually, right? And so you're not touching anything on the background, you're not adding shadows on the background, you're doing that just for the person, for the portrait, for your object. If you remember our first mistake, which was the crazy halo effect, well, this is where you have to be careful. And this is why I love Luminar Neo, because with Face AI, you're able to do that very, very softly, and it looks natural. And if you need to, you can go into the masking and then readjust your selection. You can really make things local so that they look natural at the end of the day. Sometimes it's kind of nice to see that before after photo where you kind of flipped it, where the background got darker, your subject got brighter, and it actually looks completely different and it looks awesome. So that's for portraits, but for street photography, for example, I want to add my raw photos, it's the same thing. Think about your images as a puzzle with multiple pieces and 3D, and edit each area independently. There is a tool that I love in Luminar Neo, which is called Relight, that allows you to adjust the brightness that is near, the brightness that is far, and the depth in that image in order to get those looks where it actually creates depth in the image. It makes it more dynamic, very, very simply without you having to do all the masking. It's one of those time saver that I really appreciate about Luminar Neo. And I just want to say it, this is why I recommend that software to anyone who is starting and even advanced and wants to actually save a lot of time, especially when it comes to landscape and portraits and stuff and street photography. You can do a lot of things very fast. And last but not least, it's a powerhouse, especially if you love editing one-off photos and going really narrow on one photo. It actually saved me a lot of Photoshop time where I had so many layers, and a lot of those tools do everything in just a few clicks, which is amazing. And brings us to our mistake number 4, which is making it too complex. And if you look, I got a lot of things written here. Wow, editing softwares have a lot of panels, a lot of options, right? And it's tempting, especially when you're starting to use them all and to try them all. But sometimes you end up on panel number 6, erasing or overdoing what you did on panel number 5, or compensating what you did. Let's say you added shadows here, but you're removing shadows there. Hey, things get complex for no reason very quickly. So keep it simple. If you are, example, if you like to use curves, see if you could use the contrast slider inside, because most of the time you can get almost the same result unless you want specific, for example, fading or things like that. Now, once you found the look that you like, don't go and tweak every image manually again, okay? Save it as a preset and use it on your next image. The amount and the number of people that I see edit their photo from zero every time is pretty incredible. Even if it's a series of street photos that are taken in the same light, the same environment. If you want to be a photographer with a consistent look, you want to be able to repeat that over and over again. And that doesn't mean how good you are at memorizing which slider you moved. That means being able to use tools to actually save the looks that you're creating and reapply them and tweak them as you go on other images. So just press that little button at the bottom, press save preset, and try to reuse it by adjusting its intensity if the image is a little different. And if you want to save even more time, Luminar Neo has a lot of built-in presets. Most editing softwares do. And I even created the Epic Travel collection that I personally use. Those are mine. And I use them on my photos. Those are the looks that I like. And then I just adjust the intensity, make a few tweaks, and I'm done in a few seconds. Literally editing most photos takes me maybe 3, 4, 5 seconds and I'm done. Unless I have to do the complex masking I talked about, the tweaking things, honestly, most of the time it's pretty straightforward. So simple, easy, and fast wins, because what is your goal again as a photographer? To get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new, get a creative look that you love, and get it right. And a little bonus, if you're using presets, you can actually learn from them. So you apply a preset and then you look at all the panels that have been tweaked, and that's how you learn which panel does what. So if you're ever in lack of a tutorial, just literally take a look you love that's in a preset and then literally analyze what it changed in the image. Now, promise you last one, number 5. Mistake number 5 is over editing. Okay, we talked about complex, but over editing is a thing. And it happens when we spend a lot of time on an image. I edit my photos and then I try not to look at them and come back a few hours later or a day later or 2 days later in a different light, in a different scenario, to see how it feels and how it looks. It's very easy to add too much contrast, too much saturation, too much everything, only to be disappointed in the result. So taking a pause before hitting that publish is where the magic lies. You take that pause and you come back to that edit. For example, I was editing a lot on planes and I realized the darkness actually made me edit my photos a little differently than when there was light around. So I had to retweak some images that were a little too bright or too dark on my computer. And when I actually transferred them, when I started to look at them in the right environment, I was like, whoa, this is way too dark. So my best advice for not over editing is to over edit, come back to it, tweak it, adjust it, lower everything a little bit, look at the original, look at what you did, and then take it slow, take it easy, adjust it. And while you're doing that, make sure you watch the next video to nail all your camera settings, and watch this one to see if you're making any of these photography mistakes that are holding us back. And with that being said, guys, I'm gonna wish you a beautiful day. I'll see you in the next one. Get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new. Thank you, Luminar Neo. Grab that software, try it. It's pretty cool.